The end looms. A profound tragedy just struck Jerusalem, leaving the world in shock and fear. Intense heat and extreme fire vulnerability gripped the city tonight. Jerusalem now finds itself in a compressed, urgent, and precarious state, where events typically spanning years are unfolding in mere days. The heat has settled relentlessly, refusing to dissipate. Water has vanished from its usual courses, and the very sky has reacted in unexpected ways. These aren't abstract theories or distant alerts. They are tangible, documented, and occurring in real time. Across the globe, a singular question resonates. Why here? And why now? Ancient texts foretold a period when the earth would signal distress before a great revelation. We may be standing within that very epoch. Before we proceed, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us as we explore why Jerusalem once again faces extraordinary pressures. Water returned to Jerusalem abruptly, and its arrival was anything but gentle. Sudden downpours rapidly transformed ancient thoroughfares into roaring channels within minutes, overwhelming paths that had endured centuries of foot traffic. Narrow stone alleys became torrents. Vehicles stalled as water surged around them. Merchants watched helplessly as floods breached doorways and swept away their goods. This wasn't a gradual accumulation, but a rapid, forceful displacement. Water moving with urgency through a city unprepared for such intensity. Modern infrastructure struggled. Drainage systems, designed for heavy rainfall, failed under the speed and volume of the flow. Barriers collapsed. Pumps couldn't keep pace with the rising water levels. Emergency responses were immediate, but limited by the sheer swiftness of the inundation. Jerusalem's vulnerability, often overlooked, was exposed. Despite advanced planning and engineering, the city's layout and topography amplified the water's impact, rather than absorbing it. Ancient foundations met modern stress, and neither proved resilient. A deeper concern lies beneath the surface. Jerusalem is situated along the Jordan Rift Valley, a vast tectonic fault system stretching from East Africa through the Middle East. This is not mere speculation or symbolism. It is a geological fact. The ground beneath the city is shaped by tension, pressure, and incessant movement over long periods. Flooding in such a region is never solely about water. It interacts with soil stability, subterranean cavities, and fault stress in intricate ways. History offers a sobering context. Powerful earthquakes have repeatedly devastated this region over centuries, reshaping landscapes and toppling cities. One of the most destructive occurred in 749 AD, obliterating large sections of Jerusalem and surrounding areas. These events are not predictions of future occurrences, but stark reminders of past cataclysms. The land has moved violently more than once. Scientists today use cautious language, but their consensus is unequivocal. It's not a question of if significant seismic activity will recur, but when. Tectonic stress builds gradually and releases suddenly. No instrument can pinpoint the exact moment, but the underlying mechanics are well understood. Flooding adds another layer of concern, as saturated ground can compromise fault zones and destabilize already stressed terrain. What disquiets observers is not the fear of an immediate earthquake, but the convergence of these conditions: intense rainfall, overwhelmed infrastructure, known fault lines, and historical precedent. This combination serves as a stark reminder that Jerusalem's stability is conditional. The city does not rest on immutable ground. It stands on layers of tension, both geological and symbolic. As floodwaters recede and streets dry, the reality persists. The land beneath Jerusalem is capable of movement. When pressure accrues long enough, release is inevitable. The question isn't whether the city can move, but how prepared its inhabitants truly are for when it does. Within an astonishingly brief period, rivers and waterways around Jerusalem began to recede at a pace defying normal explanation. Channels that had flowed steadily just days prior thinned, fragmented, and then left their beds exposed almost overnight. The water didn't slowly evaporate. It withdrew. Stones once submerged lay bare under the sun. Fish were left stranded in shrinking pools. The land didn't dry out. It emptied. As the water retreated, the consequences emerged instantly. Soil cracked along riverbanks. Underground moisture plummeted sharply, compromising surface stability. Areas dependent on nearby water sources were left without warning or time to adjust. What should have taken months, even years, transpired within hours. Scientists struggled to reconcile this speed with known drought or evaporation models. The rate of loss didn't align with natural cycles. Something fundamental had shifted. Then came fire. With waterways diminished and vegetation already stressed, ignition required little more than a spark. Fires erupted across the parched landscape, spreading rapidly through areas that had lost their natural moisture barrier. What water once contained, flame now exploited. Small blazes merged into advancing fronts, feeding on brittle ground and unchecked fuel. The absence of water transformed manageable fires into fast-moving threats. The fire's behavior mirrored the suddenness of the river disappearance. Flames abruptly shifted direction, driven by unstable air currents rising from superheated ground. In some areas, fire climbed slopes and crossed natural breaks that should have stalled its progress. Smoke thickened the sky as ash rose and spread, dimming daylight into a dull haze. The sun lost its sharpness behind the veil. Breathing became difficult. Visibility plummeted. The land felt stripped first of water, then of safety. Fire crews described conditions as volatile and unpredictable. Winds changed without warning. Suppression efforts were hampered by dry ground and turbulent air generated by the heat itself. Scientific explanations pointed to extreme dryness, fire-driven weather systems, and unstable atmospheric layers. These mechanisms explained how fire spreads, but not why the conditions aligned so suddenly and completely. The sequence felt accelerated, compressed into a narrow temporal window. For residents, the impact was immediate. Evacuations were swift. Sirens echoed through smoke-filled areas. Roads became gridlocked as ash fell like dark snow. Animals fled in confusion, driven from habitats that had lost both water and shelter. Many spoke not only of danger, but of exposure, a sense that essential protections had been withdrawn. Water vanished. Fire advanced. The margin for error disappeared. Throughout history, the sudden withdrawal of water, followed by fire, has carried significant symbolic weight. It represents deprivation preceding purification, pressure before revelation. An ancient warning speaks directly to such moments. I will send a famine, not of bread nor of water. Amos 8:11. This verse describes an absence arriving swiftly, leaving people searching for what once sustained them. What most unsettled observers was the convergence. Rivers retreating, ground drying, fire spreading, the sky darkening. These were not isolated events unfolding randomly, but layers building upon one another. This was not a fleeting crisis to be discarded and forgotten. It was another signal in a sequence still unfolding. Stay with us. What follows stems not from water or fire alone, but from forces continually aligning beneath the surface. It happened without warning and lasted only seconds. Yet the image circulated globally almost instantly. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky and struck the dome of the rock, igniting the night with a blinding flash as fire met gold. Cameras from various angles captured the same moment. The sky tearing open, the strike precise, the dome illuminated as if singled out. Within minutes, the footage was circulating worldwide, replayed repeatedly, each viewing intensifying the unease. The power of the moment lay not only in the lightning itself, but in its target. The Dome of the Rock stands at the heart of one of the most contested and symbolically charged locations on Earth. Beneath it lie centuries of religious history, conflict, and anticipation. Any event at this site carries weight, but fire descending directly onto it elevated the incident beyond a routine weather occurrence. The reaction was immediate. Shock spread across social media, news outlets, and religious communities, amplified by the understanding that this was no ordinary structure. Scientific explanations followed quickly. Meteorologists noted that lightning naturally seeks elevated conductive surfaces, and storms can produce unpredictable electrical discharges. From a technical standpoint, the strike could be explained. Yet for many observers, the explanation felt incomplete. Science described the mechanism, but it did not address the timing, the context, or the convergence of surrounding events. Knowing how lightning forms did little to answer why this moment felt different. What intensified the tension was what didn't happen. The dome was not destroyed. There was no collapse, no firestorm engulfing the city. The fire touched, illuminated, and withdrew. This very restraint became unsettling. Fire that destroys ends a story. Fire that merely appears raises questions. It felt less like devastation and more like a declaration, an interruption rather than a conclusion. The symbolism of fire descending from above is deeply embedded in human memory. Across history and scripture, fire from the sky marks moments when attention is demanded, when something unseen requires acknowledgement. It is often associated with warning, purification, or revelation. In this case, the fire did not consume, it announced. The image lingered not because of damage, but because of what it suggested. A further element intensified the apprehension: the prolonged absence of rain. This was no typical storm designed to purify the atmosphere or bring solace. Lightning flashed unaccompanied by precipitation, offering no cleansing release. Fire without rain has historically been perceived more as an omen than a solution, a preliminary warning preceding either benevolence or retribution. The heavens conveyed a message, yet left its implications unresolved. Witnesses noted the strike's pinpoint accuracy. It did not haphazardly spread across the cityscape, nor randomly jump between adjacent structures. Instead, it directly impacted the dome. In a metropolis where every occurrence is meticulously analysed for significance. The placement held profound meaning. Timing, locale, and symbolism converged into a singular tableau that resisted easy dismissal. While no tangible damage occurred that evening, something intangible shifted. The dome of the rock continued to stand, luminous against the sky, but the image of fire caressing gold became etched into global consciousness. It was not the lightning's destructive force that primarily unsettled people. Rather, it was the pervasive sense that the city had been highlighted, marked by an event that felt deliberate, understated, and irrefutable. After the flash over the dome dissipated and the sky returned to darkness, the feeling of unease lingered in Jerusalem, though its character transformed. What followed was not observed, but audibly perceived. In the hours and days succeeding the lightning strike, reports began to emerge of a peculiar sound traversing the skies, deep, metallic, and resonant. It bore no resemblance to thunder. It neither rolled nor cracked. It persisted, pressing into the atmosphere with a palpable weight that people experienced in their chests rather than their ears. Those who heard it struggled to describe it consistently, yet their accounts shared core details. The sound was low and potent, vibrating through buildings and bodies alike. Some likened it to a trumpet, while others described it as a colossal horn or the rasping of metal against stone. What most disquieted witnesses was its absence of discernible direction. No one could pinpoint its origin. It did not emanate from the horizon or descend from a visible source above. It enveloped them. Mobile phones were almost immediately employed. Recordings captured fragments, prolonged tones that rose and fell, sometimes layered, sometimes singular. In several videos, the sound abruptly intensified before ceasing, leaving an unnatural silence. People halted mid-stride. Conversations abruptly concluded. The city became still, listening. Even those skeptical of its importance conceded that the sound behaved unlike anything familiar. Authorities and scientists swiftly offered explanations. Some proposed atmospheric infrasound, triggered by stratospheric pressure fluctuations. Others suggested distant industrial noise, unusually amplified by shifting air layers. Seismic resonance was considered, as were aircraft construction and mechanical systems. Each theory elucidated a part of the phenomenon, yet none comprehensively accounted for it all. The sounds were reported in various locations, under differing conditions, and at distinct times. No single source fit every account. Further complicating analysis was the lack of corroborating indicators. No storms were overhead when many of the sounds were heard. There was no visible machinery, nor seismic activity potent enough to justify the intensity. Instruments showed anomalies, yet nothing definitive. The sound arrived without warning, briefly lingered, and then vanished on its own terms, leaving behind questions rather than concrete data. The psychological impact was immediate. Sound inherently carries authority. Sirens warn, bells summon, horns announce. A trumpet is never mere background noise. It demands attention. Even without understanding its source, the body reacts instinctively. Anxiety intensified, not from fear of imminent harm, but from the sensation of being addressed, as if the sound was intended to be heard, rather than explained. In ancient traditions, trumpets signaled transitions, calls to assembly, warnings to prepare, and indications that something momentous was approaching. They were not conclusions, but thresholds. Here the sound offered no instruction or explanation, only presence. It did not dictate action. It merely highlighted that an event was unfolding. If this moment resonates with you, you're not alone. Please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Beyond the gaze of cameras, headlines, and diplomatic circles, a development unfolded carrying a distinct significance. On July 8, 2025, in Shiloh, an ancient site deeply woven into Israel's spiritual heritage, a comprehensive rehearsal of the red heifer sacrifice was conducted. It was not publicized as a spectacle, nor presented as a declaration of fulfillment. Yet, for those cognizant of its implications, the event marked a pivotal shift from theoretical discussion to practical readiness. The animal chosen for the ceremony was ultimately deemed unsuitable due to a minor imperfection. By stringent standards, this should have terminated the process. Instead, the ritual proceeded precisely as prescribed. This decision was deliberate. Priestly vestments were donned according to specifications. The altar was prepared. Fire was kindled. The handling of ashes adhered to precise instructions. Every step mirrored what would be required in an actual sacrifice. Nothing was symbolic. Nothing was rushed. The entire sequence was executed as a functional rehearsal. That distinction is critical. Rehearsals are not about remembrance. They're about preparation. Their purpose is to test readiness, ensuring that nothing remains theoretical. By proceeding despite the disqualification, those involved demonstrated that the knowledge, tools, and personnel are already in place. Procedures once confined to texts are now practiced actions. The system is operational. It is only near the conclusion that the broader biblical context fully emerges. The red heifer ritual is not an end in itself. Its role is purification. It removes obstacles preventing sacred activities from proceeding. In ancient law, purification always precedes transition. Nothing follows until this step is completed. That order has never been reversed. The timing of such a rehearsal, therefore, carries meaning beyond the ceremony itself. What unsettled many observers was the restraint surrounding the event. There was no proclamation of prophecy fulfilled, no declaration that a final stage had commenced. Instead, the language remained careful and measured. This was not an announcement, it was a signal, a quiet confirmation that readiness has supplanted speculation. Context is crucial. The rehearsal did not occur in isolation. It emerged amid sustained environmental pressures, sudden shifts in natural systems, fire from the sky, inexplicable sounds, unstable ground, and increasing international alignment against Jerusalem. These events did not cause the ritual, but they framed it. Collectively, they formed a convergence difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence. The rehearsal implies a transition point, not fulfillment, but activation, not conclusion, but alignment. It indicates that ancient processes, long considered distant, are now operational. The components exist. The sequence is understood. For centuries, the red heifer has represented an impossibility, a requirement so exact that its fulfillment seemed unattainable. The occurrence of a rehearsal does not claim completion, but it eliminates uncertainty. It demonstrates that preparation is no longer hypothetical. When viewed alongside accumulating pressures from all directions, The question naturally arises: are these developments unrelated events unfolding in parallel, or are they converging towards something long anticipated? Jerusalem found itself ensnared beneath an atmosphere that no longer behaved predictably. A heat dome settled over the region, refusing to dissipate, enduring not for days, but for weeks. Weather systems typically responsible for breaking such patterns shifted elsewhere, leaving the city sealed under stagnant air. Forecasts hinted at relief that never materialized. Winds failed to disperse the heat. The dome maintained its position with an unnatural persistence that disconcerted both residents and experts. What made the situation particularly severe was the absence of nocturnal relief. After sunset, temperatures should have sufficiently dropped for bodies, buildings, and the land to cool. Instead, the heat remained entrenched. Stone walls radiated warmth long past midnight. The air remained heavy and still. Sleep became elusive or impossible, not due to noise, but because the body could not adequately cool itself. Recovery cycles were effectively interrupted. The initial signs of collapse manifested in the natural world. Birds were discovered dead without visible injury. Livestock ceased feeding, then ceased moving altogether. Small animals were found lifeless in fields and urban areas alike. These deaths were not attributable to a single extreme day. They quietly accumulated as exposure persisted. Nature did not react violently. It gradually succumbed under sustained pressure. Human impact followed a similar trajectory. Hospitals reported a rise in cases of heat exhaustion, dehydration, and respiratory distress, even among those who remained indoors. The air felt suffocating rather than merely hot. Breathing required effort. Headaches were common. Hearts raced. Fatigue compounded daily, transforming routine tasks into strenuous endeavors. People described the sensation not as being in heat, but as being compressed by it, an invisible weight bearing down without respite. Scientists analyzed the data and found that familiar models fell short. Atmospheric simulations revealed systems overwhelmed by feedback loops stacking upon one another, trapping warm air beneath high-pressure ceilings that should have migrated. Parameters for dispersal were met, yet dispersal never occurred. Meteorological explanations became increasingly cautious, filled with terms like anomalous persistence and model divergence. The science described what was happening, but not why it refused to subside. Midway through the crisis, the language began to shift. Observers moved beyond technical vocabulary to articulate the significance of the duration. Transient warmth is mere weather. Persistent heat becomes an enduring circumstance. Long ago, sacred texts precisely captured this distinction. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men are left. Isaiah 24:6. This verse doesn't depict raging infernos, but rather a relentless, prolonged burden of pressure. It wasn't a solitary, extreme occurrence to be documented and filed away, but rather an ongoing state, a system thrown permanently out of balance. It served as a forewarning, etched not in dramatic spectacles, but in relentless constancy. And as the oppressive heat continued its grip on Jerusalem, another transformation quietly commenced beneath the surface. When stress endures for extended periods, it cannot remain contained. It compels alteration, occasionally in unexpected areas. Jerusalem now finds itself at the nexus of forces seemingly compressed in time and laden with profound implications. Natural phenomena, spiritual symbols, and geopolitical tensions are no longer unfolding independently. They are converging, accumulating stress from above, below, and beyond the city's boundaries. What defines this epoch is not the severity of any individual incident, but how each development reinforces the next, creating a perception that Jerusalem is being subjected to intense compression rather than simply experiencing effects. These events have not followed a leisurely historical rhythm. Heat entrenched itself and refused to dissipate. Water vanished from where it should have remained. Fire descended, followed by seismic rumblings, and the very ground revealed its instability. Diplomatic tensions escalated as ancient rituals resurfaced with practical intentions. The speed of these changes is what most unsettles observers. Developments that would typically span decades are now manifesting within a narrow time frame, intensifying their impact and amplifying their significance. There is a growing conviction that Jerusalem is not merely responding to these forces, but rather absorbing them. Pressure emanates from the atmosphere, from the earth, from political systems, and from history itself. The city holds this tension rather than releasing it. This role is not novel. Time and again, Jerusalem has served as a focal point where unresolved forces converge. Empires have clashed within its walls. Faiths have anchored their expectations here. Conflict inexorably gravitates toward this city, even when logic suggests it should dissipate elsewhere. History reveals a pattern that recurs with disquieting consistency. Periods of intense pressure frequently precede moments of profound transformation. Jerusalem does not herald these shifts. They emerge from a gradual accumulation. When sufficient weight gathers, change follows, not suddenly, but with inevitability. This pattern has unfolded over centuries, leaving in its wake both devastation and renewal. Biblical language describes such moments with profound restraint, framing them not as ultimate conclusions, but as uncomfortable beginnings. The imagery of labor pains appears repeatedly, pressure augmenting, intervals diminishing, intensity rising before something entirely new is unveiled. Labor pains are not the ultimate outcome. They signal proximity. They indicate that a process is advancing beyond the point of no return. This framing is crucial because it counters panic. Pressure does not signify aimless chaos. It suggests movement towards something yet unseen. Whether viewed through the lens of faith, history, or pure observation, the alignment unfolding around Jerusalem challenges indifference. The city is once again positioned at the epicenter of forces far greater than itself, drawing attention precisely because it cannot be disregarded. No assertions are made here regarding specific dates or final outcomes. The emphasis is on awareness, observing patterns as they form, recognizing when repetition accelerates, and understanding that sustained pressure rarely exists without an underlying purpose. Jerusalem has borne this immense weight before, and each time, history has shifted. If this analysis resonates with you, please consider liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching and for staying with us as we continue to examine what is unfolding, carefully, thoughtfully, and without fear.